Hey, good morning everybody. Today I'm going to show you how to make real Danish pastry. I did quite a bit of research for this, and I looked at several recipes, and what I did is I modified some standard recipes and made it just a little sturdier so the pastry will survive if you're a new cook. So if you just follow the instructions, yes, it will turn out for you. And your cooking confidence is really going to skyrocket with this because when you realize that you can actually make pastry, you're going to start thinking of yourself as a real cook, because that's one of the more difficult things to learn how to do. But it's pretty simple when you get down to it. This is a long recipe. Now, how I work it is I just pick a day. I have chores to do and I'm going to be hanging around the house, and I set the times that I need for the recipe on my phone so the alarm goes off, because this is one of those recipes you can just basically, once you know where you are in it, you can just forget about it and come back to it. And each step in between only takes a couple of minutes. So it's not really that difficult. I am going to be using my stand mixer for this. You can do it by hand. I just find it a lot easier. Okay, so there's two components to this. There's the dough itself and the butter slab. And for the dough, here's the ingredient list. And the butter slab is simply 2 sticks or half a pound of unsalted butter and 2 tablespoons of flour. For the flour, I just scoop the cup into the container and get it, overflowing, and then take a knife and just flatten it off. And that way you know that your measurements are accurate. So start with your dry ingredients. Once all the dry ingredients are in, you don't even have to mix them up. Just start it on low with the dough hook in here, just to mix it up for a minute or so and get the yeast and the salt and the sugar mixed into the flour. Next, add the egg. And the milk. Now here's a little tip for measuring liquids in small containers. Some people just hold the cup like this and it can balance and maybe spill. What you do is, if you take your thumb and forefinger and just support it with your 2 other fingers in behind like that, okay, it stays perfectly flat and you won't make a mistake measuring. See? And let this go on low for 5 minutes on the clock. Now just zoom in a bit here so you can see the dough hook is great for this. It starts picking the stuff up from the side and mixing the wet ingredients. And in about 5 minutes, well actually exactly 5 minutes, everything should have pulled away from the side and be one big ball. Now what you can do is stop it halfway through. I'm going to check it in 2 minutes and pull the lump off the hook to make sure it's completely mixed in. Okay, so it's been 2 minutes. Stop the mixer and just pull that off with obviously clean fingers, and just mash that back in, hook it up again, and let it go for 3 more minutes. So my 3-minute alarm has just gone off there, and I'll zoom out so you can see the whole thing. I just hit stop. Yep, it's one mass, and I'll just grab it here, take it out of the bowl to give you a look. Now what you can do is you can squeeze it just to make sure that there's no hard lumps in it anywhere. This is feeling just fine. This will be very sticky right now. That's fine. You don't need to flour it. You don't need to do anything to it, okay? Just get a plastic bag and lay it on the counter for half an hour before you refrigerate it. And I'm going to give you a complete list of the times right now. So I've got the time set on my phone, and I'll just review these quick with you. So the first alarm, I started at noon. It is actually noon right now, or a little bit after. So the 12:30 alarm is going to be to put the dough in the fridge to rise for 2 hours. At 2:30 I take it out and I make the butter slab and do the first turn, and I'll explain the turns later in the video. 3 o'clock is second turn, 3:30 is third turn. Now, I should mention now, if you want a doughy kind of bready Danish, do 3 turns. If you like a crispy, flaky pastry Danish, which I love, do 4 turns. So I'm going to do the 4th turn at 4 o'clock. Then what you do is you let it rise and rest in the fridge after all the turns are done for 1 hour. Okay? And then you shape the Danish and leave them rise for 2 hours on the counter. So they will be ready to go in the oven at 7 o'clock. Like I said, this is a long all-day recipe, but if you've got all your alarms set, you can do chores, you can, you know, go shopping in the 2 hours, do whatever you want, right? But you'll see later in the video that you don't really have to do that much at each step. First alarm has just gone off, so time to put it in the fridge. It feels a little bit softer. Now, I don't seal this up completely. I just make sure it's not totally closed. I leave like a little bit of air in it before I put it in the fridge. Now, the 2 hour rest, I should say, you know, you want to do laundry, you want to go shopping, do some Christmas baking, watch a movie, whatever. If it goes a little longer than 2 hours, it's not going to hurt it. These rise times are not precise, they're minimums. Okay? So don't sweat any of this. If you do have to do longer at any stage, just reset your clock, okay? And just keep track of where you are in the process. This is supposed to be fun too, okay? Well, the alarm went off at 2 hours, so I pulled it out and you can see how much softer it's gotten. It didn't get that much bigger, but it really softened up. So, for the butter, I use plastic wrap. You can use parchment, but you're gonna end up breaking through the paper quite a bit. I just find this a lot easier. What I do is I start with 2 sheets on the bottom, and you'll see why. And the third one I just leave on the side for now. I won't even cut it, I'll just put it over there. Get your butter out of the fridge. I don't like to keep it on the counter to soften up, because what happens with this is if it gets too hot and starts to melt, you got to put it back in the fridge, and adds a lot of time to the recipe. You're far better to do it straight from cold. Just quickly chop that into small pieces. Doesn't really matter how big they are. And once you got the butter chopped up, just put it onto the plastic wrap and get 2 tablespoons of flour and sprinkle that over the top of the butter. This is where you get your third piece of plastic wrap. And just put that on top and start whacking it with a small rolling pin. Now I do finish this by hand. Some people use the whacking method all the way through. What's important for you to see here is when you hit it like this, it spreads out. So you want to do this a bit at the beginning of the dough to try to work the butter right to the edges, so you can see that one went well when you hit it. Now, that's not going to be enough to get the flour in. So what I do is I just take this off briefly, and you can use gloves for this if you want. I'm quite careful to actually not touch the butter. So what you want to do is you want to pick it up that way, and then pick it up again to get it in the middle. And if you use the edges as saran wrap. So what I'm doing is covering up the flour with the butter. Okay, so that went well. Put this back on. Now, you can either go with this as well. The reason I like using my hands is you get just enough heat that it gets very malleable, but it doesn't melt, provided you don't touch it too much. Okay? And you can work the flour in with the palm of your hand. Now, if for whatever reason your plastic wrap tears, just get some more and transfer it. Do you see there's flour at the bottom there? That's why I want to pick it up and turn it over. And if you're careful, you can just keep going like this without the third piece until the flour is mixed in. When it's getting just to the right consistency, you'll notice it's moving really nicely and the flour is practically in. Okay, so you just want to kind of turn that over and look at the bottom. If that's looking fine, then what you'll do is just kind of lump it up, okay, and get the other piece back on there, and carefully with your hands just make it into a rough square. See what I'm doing there? Just square it up with your hands. So you got a nice slab. Now, what you should do is just pop this back in the fridge while you get your dough rolled out. Now, provided your counter is clean, oddly enough, you really don't even need any flour for this. It's kind of awesome. So what you can do is just squeeze it up, see how it's feeling there. And then just gently roll it out. Kind of tug on it a little, or use your hands to square it. You don't want it too big at this point. Okay, so that's looking good, and I'll get the butter back out. Now, if you've done this right, you'll see that it's got the same glossy texture. It's sort of a matte finish, but it's not shiny. Okay, so just put that on there, and you can use your hands a bit as long as they're clean. It's fine. So do you see that? So you've got a square this way and the butter at a 45-degree angle. So what you're going to do is you're going to pull that up and put it over. Pull the other corner up and put it over. You see where I'm getting at with this? It's like an envelope. Folding a piece of paper and get that up. And what's important now is that you squeeze all the edges, because I'm going to start whacking it in a minute with the pin for a bit. And you don't want butter coming out the cracks here. So just take a minute to pinch that. And once that's pinched nice, then you get your rolling pin. Don't hit yourself. And if you can see it's not together because it was lifting a bit, pinch it again. See, there's another part that needs a pinch. So pinch it, whack it, pinch it, whack it. So when all the edges are together, then what you're going to do, I'll zoom out a little bit here, is you're going to just start to roll it really evenly. You want to get all the butter out to the edges, but you don't want it to come up. Now you can see a bit of the butter underneath. You can see the yellow there, but it's not breaking through. That's important. Now you can also turn it over at this point to make sure it's all even. And roll it the other way as well. Now, because the seams are on this side, you're going to want to fold it in. So what you do is you get it out basically about the size of a piece of paper, trying to keep your edges neat, okay, like a letter-sized piece of paper, and then pick it up and fold it Okay. Now that is what we call a turn when you make pastry. So that's your first turn. Now, some books will tell you to mark it with your nail or something on the dough itself. Honestly, when it rises in the fridge, this disappears. Plus, you cut through the layers. You're far better just to get a little piece of paper and write down 1. Okay? And this is why you've got your alarm set. Now, if it took you longer than it did me, check your times, reset it, everything for another half an hour for 3 more turns. So this is the first turn, and I'm going to come back in a half an hour and do the second turn. Just pop it right back in the same bag and put it, oops, there goes the rolling pin, which I will clean, don't worry. Okay, so just pop it right back in the same bag. There's no need to close it now. Just it loose like that and the fridge is full. So the alarm went off there and I wiped down my area and cleaned up my rolling pin that fell on the floor. There's always some excitement, eh? Okay, it's just a little bit sticky. Just a titch. Now the reason you chill it is so the butter doesn't break through, okay? Because else you're just going to get goops. And you'll also notice it's got this lovely pillowy texture right now because since the yeast is in here, this is different than real puff, like, just puff pastry, which I'm easing you into here. Yes, I will get to that. Don't worry about it. At some point, I do have a plan. It appears totally random sometimes, but I kind of get taken away if I get on some kind of kick for some kind of food, but I do have a list. So turn that over, and you're always going to want to fold in your seams. So that's looking just lovely. Yeah, you can see there's like little yeasty bubbles underneath that hopefully will come out somewhere, but not butter. Okay, so once that's like that, and start rolling it this way. Okay, so just turn it over once more. Well, actually, I think those seams are bigger than these seams. Because I'll tell you, when you get to the end, I don't like to lose any of this, but the ones that are right at the end are going to look a little funny. But I guess those are the taster's portion for the people that do the hard work to make these. Because not just your guests should get to benefit. We'll zoom in on that spot there so you can see that's what you're trying to avoid, is the butter breaking through. That's not a disaster, and you can see it's starting to get a little warm there. It's getting shiny. So this is rolled out more than enough for a good fold here. So there's our second turn. It's looking nice. Pop it back in the bag and come back in a half an hour. So we're coming up to the third turn here. Now, as I said earlier, if you want a doughy type of Danish pastry, this is going to be your last turn. I like the crispy, flaky, so I'm going for the fourth turn. You can see it even rose a little bit again, just in that half an hour. So just the same again. Yeah, there's just a little bit of butter breaking through. But there's so many layers in this, doesn't really matter. As long as you just don't tear it wide open, you're fine. Now, because it is broken through, I am going to fold this side. See, this is what happens if it gets too hot. So, just to be on the safe side, I think I'm going to leave it in for 45 minutes instead of a half an hour, because I got all the time in the world this afternoon. So it's starting to get dark. Yeah, that's firmed up quite nicely. That's what I mean. Just as long as you adjust the times on your clock, you're fine. So this is, we're going to go into the fourth and final turn here. So I'll just give you a look at this, how nice feeling that is. And there's a little bit of an open there, but that's not going to be a big deal. So I'll zoom back out. Now, at any stage of this, when you're ready, you don't have to cut it right away. The finished pastry will keep in the fridge for a couple of days, which is nice. Or you can actually freeze it at this point and then bring it out of your deep freeze as if you'd bought it from the store, but it's your own frozen pastry, which is just so cool. It tastes so much better. You can't even get Danish like this at the store, okay? Seriously, I'm not joking at all. Yeah, so even after 45 minutes, it's still a little mushy. So I don't want to tear this open excessively. So I think I'll just see what I can do here and just fold it up and put it back in the fridge. Because the final one after the fourth turn, this has to rest for an hour, at which point I'm going to form the pastries and let them sit for 2 hours. This is ready to roll and cut now, and you can see I've got some additional equipment. I've got a couple of baking sheets and some flour on it and some parchment. So first thing I'm going to do is just lay out parchment on the sheets here, and I keep a couple extras to cover them while they're rising so they don't dry out too much. And what I have here in this bag is a pastry cutter. Okay, now I keep it in the plastic bag because the sleeve tends to roll off, and this thing is really sharp. All right, it looks like a pizza cutter, but it's not. Be very careful if you buy one of these and you handle it, because this is like a really sharp knife. Now, if you don't have one of these, use a really sharp knife. Okay, so I'll just put that away for the time being while I roll out the dough. Yeah, you want to try to do this really quick, because as you can see, it's sticking. I really don't like using flour at all at this point. I think I am going to just roll it flat on the other side. This side seems friendlier. And what you want to do is get it in a big rectangle. And do try to keep it square. If you get a couple of tears at this point, it's not a real big deal when you consider how many layers we have in here. Okay, so that's about as good as you're going to get. So I transfer it to the cutting board. And some of the pastry is sticking, but you can't really help that. I'm not even going to bother to clean that up. I'll do that later. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to make 12 Danish out of this. So I'm just going to just eyeball it in the middle. So there's 6 and 3 and 3, and then cut these strips sort of even. I leave a bit more on the end piece because it's rounded. These are not going to be perfect, but I mean, come on, hey, they're homemade, eh? So we have everything cut here. What you can do if you want is just transfer some of the strips to the baking sheet. If you're uncomfortable getting butter all over your hands, get some gloves, okay? Because what you're going to do is you're going to start pulling very, very gently. You don't want this to tear, okay? And holding one end, just roll it like that. And after you've got it rolled, just start turning it into a spiral, like a snail. See that? And then what you do is just take the end and pinch it underneath. And you can flatten it out a bit if you want. And just lay that on the baking sheet. And do the same. The end ones are always going to be a little funny because they've been worked over the most. So I don't try to stretch them so hard because, yeah, they can break. You just kind of go through the motions on this one. So pull gently, keeping it even. Hold it. Roll it towards you. When you got a nice spiral, just roll it up. And then tuck the little end underneath. Pinch it a bit, not too much. Lay it on your sheet and just keep going like that. All the pastries are formed. And I'll just zoom in so you can see how nice they look. Now what you're going to do is you're just going to get another sheet of parchment. I find parchment works much better than plastic wrap for this because it doesn't stick. Okay? And just drape that over that like that. And let these sit at room temperature to rise for 2 hours. Now, I do set an additional alarm at about an hour and a half in just to get the oven started at 375. So it's nice and hot when you're ready to go. The oven's hot and they finished rising. They didn't get that big, but you know what? It is December and it's a little cool in my kitchen, so, but they're a lot better than they were before. So what I'm going to do is pop them in at 375, 15 to 20 minutes. Now, what you should do is at around 8 minutes, well, I'm assuming it's going to be halfway through, check them, pull them out, and flip the racks so they bake evenly. So it's at the 8-minute mark. Let's pull out the first one. There you go. Yeah, so you can see they're browning a little bit, but not too much. So that one, and this one's lighter than the other one. So that's why you switch trays and put this at the top. And it's usually a good idea to turn it around as well. And then pop the other one in the bottom and let it go, I'd say, for another 8 minutes or so. It's been 16 minutes total, so I'll just haul them out. I took a quick peek. They're looking good. Yeah. So because it's baking, I mean, honestly, this is always to personal preference. If you like them a little bit darker, cook them longer. And I usually would take longer with this, but I just got a phone call and I have to leave pretty much now. So I'm just going to show you one. See, there's the bottom. I'm just got to zoom in here so you can see that it's cooked all the way. Okay, and the other ones are looking good as well. And what I'll do is I'll just take one here and put it on paper and tear it open so you can have a look at it. And I'll just leave the other ones to cool on the rack. And it's a little warm. Yeah. But you can see that the consistency is flaky and it's beautiful. And when these cool off and the moisture's gone, they should be crispy all the way through. Like, I'll take a bite now, or you can just hear that, right? Okay. That's still pretty warm. But when these settle down, they'll be really, really nice. And sorry, I wish I could take longer, but I do have to leave kind of right now. And you get the idea. So I do hope you guys try these and like them. This is just the basic recipe. I'm going to be doing more later. And hopefully I won't get called out of the house so I can spend a bit longer. But as usual, thanks for watching. Hope to see you again.